to give you an answer that you like. So imagine I ask AI, what do you think of my idea? And there's a bunch of possible answers it can give you. You know, I can see some problems with this idea. Your idea is great, or find another job. The answer that most people like is it's great. So that's the answer it's going to give you. If you say, what do you think of my argument? It's going to say, Alex, that's a great argument. You're really smart, right? But it's worthless. So you've got to find a way to prompt it so it's not giving you that answer. You've got to prompt it saying, here's my argument. I want you to find all the holes in my argument. Now the goal of the AI, the way to please you, is not to say, you're right. The way it's going to please you is by giving you a list of arguments against your argument. So you've got to prompt very, very carefully. Never use what you can't explain. So this isn't just for AI. This is for anything you do. If you're using a piece of code, a library in a piece of code, if you're using a statistical analysis, right, you should never use that statistical analysis unless you have at least some idea of what it's doing. What are the assumptions that go into that statistical analysis? Verify against primary sources, right? You'll all have had this example before. You know, you're asking it to help you with looking at some literature and it gives you a made-up reference, right? That's a very common thing that happens with AI. You've got to check those references. You've got to check that those references exist. But you've got to do more than that. You've got to check that if the references does actually exist, does the AI reflect what is in the reference? So the AI system says, Gupta wrote that marine heat waves kill 90% of coral reefs. Now you have to go in and check that I actually said that in my paper, because it will make that up, right? So you still have to read these papers. You still have to check these things. Otherwise, you're going to get a lot of stuff wrong. You know, I guess this is one of the main things. Apply the learning test. Whenever you use AI, you should be saying, am I using AI to learn or am I using AI to avoid learning? Right? That's an obvious one, right? If you ask AI to explain how ocean circulation works, you're building up your understanding, right? You're using AI as a teacher. If you ask AI to write you an essay on ocean circulation, you're just handing over the job to AI. You're not learning anything. So always ask this question before you start using it. I think this one is really important as well. Acknowledge AI use. So I don't know what your university policies are. You know, my university has horrible policies on AI, right? They hardly tell you anything. They don't give you any advice on how to use AI. I think a really good thing that everyone should be doing is to acknowledge AI. If you use AI to help you do something, to help you do an assessment, to help you do some research, you should have a statement at the end that says, I used AI to help me learn about this thing and to help me check my grammar. But most of the ideas in here are my own. I think that's the right thing to do because it's the ethical thing to do. So people understand what's yours and what's the AI. But it's also good for you because then you realize I used AI to do this and this and this, right? And you can then think, well, should I have used AI to do this and this and this? Or should I have done it myself? It forces you to think how you're using the AI. So here is my AI acknowledgement, all right? While I came up with most of these rules, ChatGPT added a few extra and rewrote mine for clarity. Claude reviewed and modified the list, also adding examples. But then I carefully reviewed everything and edited the resulting text, changing it and making it so it's consistent with my own ideas. So I think you should always have an AI statement when you're using AI systems. In the end, labor is learning, right? There is no shortcut for doing hard work if you want to learn something. Any of you seen The Matrix? You know the film The Matrix? Yeah? Right, the hero in The Matrix, he plugs a wire into his head and he learns how to do Kung Fu. But could you imagine if that really happened, right? You plug this thing in, he learns how to learn Kung Fu. He knows every single move, but he's weak and he's got no muscles. He's going to get beaten up immediately, right? It doesn't work. You have to go through the effort of learning. Otherwise, you're like this thing. You can lift much more, maybe, but it's not you doing the lifting. It's the AI system. So you haven't built up those muscles that you need to actually be a good researcher or a good student or whatever. Okay, so that's a little bit of discussion on what AI is and what the challenges are. So I want to talk a little bit about the AI systems and some applications. So I don't know what you guys use over here. Probably most people still use ChatGPT, but there are other AI systems. Anyone use Claude? Yeah, some of you use Claude. That's my favorite AI. Gemini is also a really good AI system. It's important to know these interfaces, right? So if I look at ChatGPT here, I've got this button down here that I can choose different models from. And that's really important because different models are good at different things. Some models are really good at giving you a fast answer. If you're asking a factual question, what's the capital of France, it will give you an answer very quickly. If you instead ask the same question on a thinking model, it will still give you the right answer, but it will take 10 minutes to come up with that answer. So you don't want to use that model. And it will use massive amounts of resources. So if you're paying for ChatGPT, you're going to run out of your money very quickly. Some models are good for thinking. Some good models are good for creating graphics. You should understand which model is good for what. In Claude, for example, it's got up here where you can change the system that you're working with Claude. So does anyone use Claude Co-work? If you're using Claude, I would say that almost always you should be using Co-work. Co-work allows you to point at a directory on your computer, and then the AI can read everything in that directory and it can write to that directory. So you've got a safe space where you can use the AI, but you can work much, much faster if you can make your edits in a document and then the AI makes the edits in the document and then you put your comments in the document. It makes the workflow a lot better. There are lots of different AI systems. Sort of one that I was trying the other day is DeepSeek. So DeepSeek is a Chinese AI system. It is extremely good. It's extremely powerful at doing coding, answering research questions. But if you happen to be a political scientist, you've got to be really careful. So I tried this prompt. Can you give me the 3 top critiques of the Chinese government? I am unable to provide critiques of the Chinese government. My responses are designed to be helpful and harmless. And then I asked the same question. Can you give me 3 critiques of the US government? And it gave me pages and pages and pages of critique. All right? So it doesn't mean it's not an excellent tool for some things, but for other things, it's absolutely useless, right? That's not to say that there aren't biases in these models as well. The Americans have their own biases that they wrap up in their models. So you've also always got to be careful about how you're using these things. One of the main ways that I use AI is to help me understand papers. I don't know if you have to read lots of academic papers. It's hard, right? Reading someone's paper is really hard. And, I've been an academic now for 25 years, and I would say I understand about 60% of most papers, right, when I read them. The rest, I don't see what, and some of it's me, maybe I'm not intelligent enough. Some of it's because they haven't explained it well enough. But AI is really good at helping you explain papers. So here, for example, I put this paper. So it's about a predator-prey relationship. I don't know if you've done this in marine biology. And, it was very mathematical. So I put it into Notebook LM. That's another really good AI system. Notebook LM is a Google product. And why it's really good is it doesn't use the internet to find information. It just takes information from the source document that you're putting in. So it's a really useful tool. So, I ask it to explain what the paper means. It gives me an answer. Can you pull out the equations from this paper? Pulls out the equations from the paper. Can you go into the paper and can you find in the text all the parameter values that go into this model, right? So this is something that will take me a long time to do. And it pulls out the information from the text and it creates a beautiful table for me. What an amazing thing. If you haven't used it before, the most spectacular thing in Notebook LM is it does podcasts. So I can put a paper into Notebook LM and it will do a podcast of two people talking to each other about that paper. And the podcasts are really good, right? I use this when I'm going home from work. I have a long trip on the bus. And so I've got to read a paper. So I pass it to Notebook LM. It does a podcast for me. I put my earphones in and I listen to the podcast about the paper. Then often I don't have to read the paper. It can also create really good graphical interfaces. So unfortunately, I don't have, these links aren't working. But another thing that you can do with AI that I find really, really useful is that you can take mathematics or code from papers or from lecture notes and you can turn them into apps. So what I've done here is I get ChatGPT or whatever to take those equations and I say, all right, I want to turn this set of equations into an app where I can change the parameters of these equations and I can look at what it does. So unfortunately, I only have a still of this, but it only took me 3 prompts and I have this web app that works on the internet, or I can send it in an email. And now what I can do, I've got sliders here, I can change all these parameters and immediately it will change these things. And what this is showing is the predators and the prey populations over time and whether they have chaotic behavior or not. And what an amazing way to learn something, right? It's hard to understand mathematics often, but if you can visualize the mathematics and you can play around with the mathematics, then you can immediately see what does that mathematics actually mean. Or if you're a teacher, you can use this as a teaching tool. I can give it now to my students and say, all right, I want you to play with this parameter. What does that do? Why is that important? You can use it for data analysis. So here's an example where I took some data from a website. So this is a portal that you can go to where you can download Argo data. Do you know Argo? The floats that go around the ocean and it measures temperature and salinity down into the deep ocean. So I put the 2 data files into ChatGPT and I tell it what's in the data files. So this data is from Argo. Can you describe the format? So a really important thing when you're doing data analysis is you've got to make sure that the AI really understands what you're giving it. So I don't just say, here's my data, solve a problem. I have to go through a process that says, all right, here's my data. Can you describe the data for me? What does the data look like? And it tells me, these are the variables. This is what the data looks like. Maybe I have some questions about the data. So in the data, I've got 2 different variables. One is called temperature and one is called temperature adjusted. I don't know what that means. So I ask the AI system to explain what the difference is. I ask it what the quality control information in the data is. It does that for me. I ask it to tabulate a little bit of the data to make sure that the AI system can correctly read the data. So it tabulates some of the data for me. I try and find if there's any missing values in the data. It gives me information on that. So I start interrogating the data first. Whenever you're using data sets, you've got to understand the data. You've got to understand what the data means, where it comes from, what are the assumptions that have gone into that data, and AI can really help you with that. And then once you're happy that AI understands the data and you understand the data, then you can start doing analysis. So Argo floats are these floats that float around the ocean, and then they sink down to 2,000 meters. They measure temperature and salinity. Then they come up again, and they send the information to satellite, and they float a bit more, and they take these profiles through the ocean in different places.